Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpeckers Deep Dive. My name's Jeff Farris. Welcome to my shop. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Woodpeckers' new SkillSquares. And specifically, we're going to take a look at using these for doing angled cuts, and specific angle cuts that we're going to talk about are rafters. I'm going to show you a little bit about rafter layout using the SkillSquare. This just in response to customer requests, we're bringing out the SkillSquares in metric too. Same price, same features, but metric scales and metric spacing on the scribing guides. All right, let's get started. So let's talk about some of the fundamentals of setting angles with the SkillSquare. And what we're going to talk about applies to all of the carpenter's type squares. What we want to pay attention to here is that when we're doing angles, we're always pivoting off this point. This gives you nothing. That doesn't do anything for you. You always set the angle by pivoting off this point. And we sharpen that point so that we have a very, very positive axis point when we're setting our angles. Now we're going to read the angle right here on this side. So whether we are doing hip valley rafter settings, common rafter settings, or angles in degrees, we're always measuring that to the edge of the stock right here. So once we have the angle that we want at this point, we're marking it here. Okay, so that's a 20-degree angle on our board right there. Now, one problem that we'll have with construction lumber in particular is you'll notice that it has a big radius on it. And actually, the radius is bigger than what it looks like here because I've planed this stock so it'd be a little smoother for my pencil marks and it'd show up on the camera a little better. So I've actually removed some of that radius and it's still huge. When you're trying to set an angle and you want to be consistent, let's say again when we're doing rafters, let me show you a little trick with these squares that will improve the accuracy of setting your angles. Now, in earlier episodes of Deep Dive, taking a look at the delve squares, you may remember that I brought out a stair gauge. Now, this is a nifty little attachment that's originally designed for framing squares, but it is wonderful to use with the delve squares and also with our new SkillSquares. If I want to repeat an angle, all I have to do is slide that on, set the angle where I want it, bring it up, lock it, and now that angle is going to stay consistent as I move to different locations. What the stair gauge won't do for us, though, is help with that radiused edge. So here's what I do. I'm going to take this, I'm going to come to something like my workbench that doesn't have a radius. It's got a hard corner. Now, it's very easy to see when that angle is right on the line. And I'm going to take that, we'll set that to 25 now, bring my stair gauge up, push it against the edge of the workbench and lock it. And now I can repeat that 25 anywhere as many times as I want. So now when I come back to my 2x material with that huge radius on it, it isn't going to bother us. We know that our lineup is right on the actual edge of the stock, not on the radius. So now let's look at the 4 standard cuts on a common rafter. So to set up for our rafters, we're going to use a common roof pitch of 4 and 12. So what that means is from the wall of the house moving toward the center of the house, for every 12 inches that you go in, the roof is going to go up 4 inches. So let's go to 4 in 12, and we're going to put our stair gauge on and lock it up. Now here is one of the reasons I really like to use the stair gauge. When we lay out a rafter, we have 3 cuts that need to be at precisely the same angle. That's how we're going to get them exactly the same every time, is not by trying to go by eyeball every time, but actually using a physical reference. So the first mark we're going to make is that 4/12 pitch, and this is actually going to be right here, that's going to be the peak of the roof. Okay, that takes care of the peak. Now, let's go to the other end of the rafter, and we're going to lay out the bird's mouth that sits on top of the outside wall. So now I'm going to pick a random point here. Let's call it right there. And from our drawings on our house, we know that that is the outside of the wall. And that is where we want the first part of our bird's mouth, which is called the plumb cut. That's exactly the same as the peak cut. It's at exactly the same angle running in the same direction. So I'm just going to line up. I'm still at my 4 and 12, line up right at the edge and make a mark a little more than halfway across the board. So now we're ready to make what's called the seat cut. And the seat cut is going to be square to the plumb cut, and it's going to be the width of the top of our wall. Now, here's where the SkillSquare really shines. What we need to do is we need to mark a line this way that is the width of the top of our wall, and that can be highly variable. Normally it's 3.5 inches, so a lot of the carpenter squares have a mark at 3.5 inches for you to go by. But what if it's not 3.5? Let's say that we've got our sheeting on, 1/2 inch sheeting on a 3.5 inch wall, and so our seat cut needs to be 4 inches, not 3 inches. Well, that's no big deal. I can just slide down here, and because of the scribing notches, we have an excellent way to line up our seat cut. All we have to do is put the 4-inch mark on the line and the 4-inch scribing guides also right on the line. Right there. Now we have our 4-inch seat cut perfectly perpendicular to our plumb cut. Now, if all that went right, I can take this precision triangle and drop it on here, and that will be perfectly square, just like that. Now, the overhang of the eave is calculated from the outside of the wall to the end of the rafter. And let's say that we want that to be 9 inches. I can't measure from down here. I have to measure from the wall. And with a tape, that's very difficult. That's why the XT model of the SkillSquare has this scale on the outside. I can drop that right on the outside of my wall. There's 6 inches. Now we want 3 more. Okay, that 3-inch mark, we're going to carry that to the bottom. Now we're going to take our 412, line that up, and there is our eave cut. I hope that demystified rafter layout for you a little bit. But you know what? If you never lay out a rafter in your life, everything that I showed you today on the SkillSquare applies to all types of furniture and cabinet making as well. It's a really great little tool to do your angled layouts. Thanks so much for watching today. If you haven't yet, be sure and subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. That way you'll know about every one of our great videos right when they come out. If you like the show, be sure and give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time on Deep Dive.